It didn't come from a tabloid, a leaked source, or a shaky social media rumor. It came from the Osbourne family themselves. On the morning of July 22nd, 2025, the world woke up to a stunning, surreal announcement. Ozzy Osbourne, the legendary frontman of Black Sabbath, had died peacefully at the age of 76. The words hit like a thunderclap across every corner of the internet. The Prince of Darkness, gone. But in the days leading up to his death, the noise was deafening. Just a few weeks earlier, TikTok and YouTube were flooded with sensational AI-generated clips falsely claiming Ozzy had already passed. Some even used fake voiceovers and edited footage to mimic news broadcasts. Fans were furious. His daughter, Kelly Osbourne, stepped in personally to call out the misinformation, saying, "My dad is not on his deathbed, he's just old and cranky." But what no one knew was that behind the scenes, Ozzy was quietly preparing for his final act. While many believe the Ozzy hoaxes were just more internet garbage, something felt different this time. The rumors felt heavier, maybe because of how much he'd already been through. After years of battling Parkinson's disease, surviving multiple spinal surgeries, and dealing with severe respiratory complications, the man's health was clearly in steep decline. But his family stayed tight-lipped, offering little more than vague updates about his condition. For fans, that only made things more mysterious. Then came the official word. The post was brief, respectful, heartbreaking. Sharon Osbourne confirmed it with a statement that praised Ozzy's legacy and thanked fans for their years of support. There were no dramatic flourishes, just the undeniable truth that one of music's most chaotic, controversial, and celebrated figures was gone forever. And what made it even more surreal was the timing. Just a few weeks earlier, Ozzy had sat on stage at one final Black Sabbath reunion show in Birmingham, billed as a charity concert called Back to Beginning. It featured the original lineup and several huge names in rock. For many, it felt like closure. Now, in hindsight, it feels like a final farewell, one Ozzy planned with eerie precision. The news wasn't just shocking. It marked the end of a generation. Ozzy wasn't just another rock star. He was the blueprint for rebellion. From biting the head off a bat to reshaping metal's image through reality TV, his impact spanned 5 decades. He wasn't supposed to die quietly. But in the end, maybe that's what made it so powerful. Still, one question lingered. If this was the ending, was it one he saw coming? Because what happened in the weeks before his death had fans questioning everything. Ozzy Osbourne's fall from the stage wasn't sudden. It was slow, painful, and public. Over the past 2 decades, fans watched as a wild, electrified frontman who once ran across arenas began to move more like a man twice his age. But for those paying attention, the real turning point came in January 2020, when Ozzy dropped the bombshell on Good Morning America. He had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. At first, he tried to downplay it. He said it wasn't a death sentence, that he was managing, that he'd be back on the road soon. But fans could tell something had shifted. His speech had slowed. His balance was off. The once unstoppable force of nature now needed a cane, and eventually, assistance just to walk. Behind the scenes, things were worse than most people knew. Parkinson's wasn't the only battle he was fighting. Back in 2003, Ozzy had suffered a catastrophic ATV accident that fractured his spine. Over the years, those injuries got worse. In 2019, he suffered another fall at home that dislodged metal rods in his back. The result? Intense nerve pain, multiple surgeries, and long stretches confined to a hospital bed. His respiratory issues didn't help. Diagnosed with emphysema, Ozzy often struggled to breathe, especially when flying. Combined with his weakened immune system, it made travel nearly impossible. Tour after tour was canceled. Fans were heartbroken, but most understood their hero was in survival mode. By 2022, he tried to mount a comeback. His album Patient No. 9 was a surprise success, winning him a Grammy and proving he still had creative fire. But when it came to performing live, things weren't the same. In interviews, Ozzy openly admitted he didn't know if he could ever tour again. "I'm just waiting for someone to tell me I'm okay to go," he said. That approval never really came. In 2023, he officially canceled his European tour dates. The wording of his announcement was crushing. He said his body simply couldn't handle the rigors of travel. "I never imagined my touring days would end this way," he wrote on Instagram. "But my team has been trying to find ways for me to perform without constant travel." It was a quiet goodbye, masked as a delay. Still, Ozzy didn't disappear. He made red carpet appearances, though in a wheelchair. He did interviews, though often with long pauses and visible discomfort. He stayed engaged with fans, posting updates and occasionally teasing new music. But his spark, that electric energy he was known for, was dimming. What made all of this so difficult to watch was that Ozzy had always seemed invincible. He had survived things most people couldn't even imagine: decades of substance abuse, public meltdowns, legal battles, accidents, disease. And yet, here he was, slowly fading in front of our eyes. Not from any one blow, but from a lifetime of damage finally catching up. But just when fans thought he'd quietly retreat from the spotlight, he shocked everyone with one last move. If Ozzy Osbourne knew his time was running out, Back to the Beginning may have been his final message to the world. Held in June 2025 in his hometown of Birmingham, England, this wasn't just another charity show. It was a gathering of legends. Marketed as a one-night-only fundraiser for spinal injury research, the concert featured a jaw-dropping lineup: Slash, Brian May, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and even surprise appearances from stars like Dave Grohl and Lars Ulrich. But it wasn't just the names on the bill that made the night special. It was a feeling that something big, something final was happening. Ozzy hadn't performed live in almost 2 years. His body was frail, his voice softer. But when he was rolled out onto that stage in the custom-built throne, the crowd erupted. Tears, screams, and chants of "Ozzy, Ozzy" filled the arena. This wasn't a concert anymore. It was a celebration, a send-off, and for many, it felt like witnessing history. He didn't move much. He couldn't. But that didn't matter. Backed by Iommi and Butler, Ozzy delivered haunting renditions of Black Sabbath classics like War Pigs and Iron Man. His vocals were raw and perfect, but undeniably real. At one point, Slash joined him on stage for a blazing cover of Crazy Train, and the audience completely lost it. Ozzy smiled. He waved. He whispered, "Thank you," more times than anyone could count. But it was the final song of the night that hit hardest. Changes, a soft ballad, a farewell in lyrics. As the lights dimmed, the screen behind Ozzy played black and white footage of his early days, gritty footage of 1970 Sabbath shows, old interviews, moments with his family. And when he sang the final line, "I'm going through changes," there wasn't a dry eye in the building. Many fans didn't realize it at the time, but this concert was more than nostalgic. It was intentional, quietly symbolic, a closing chapter. Days after the show, Sharon Osbourne revealed that Ozzy had personally curated the lineup, selected the set list, and insisted on the name Back to the Beginning. In hindsight, the message is hauntingly clear. He wanted to end where he started, full circle. And there was something else, something fans couldn't stop talking about. Ozzy's final Instagram post after the concert. Just a simple photo. Him on stage in silhouette, arms raised. The caption read, "Thank you for the ride. Love you all." Oh, it didn't scream farewell, but it didn't have to. It was personal, poetic, final. The media praised the event as one of the most powerful goodbyes in rock history. Fans called it Ozzy's funeral while he was still alive. Everyone who was there or even just watched online felt it. This wasn't just a concert. It was closure. But what no one saw coming was how fast things would unravel next. After that unforgettable night in Birmingham, most people thought Ozzy would take time to rest, maybe disappear from the spotlight for good. But behind the scenes, something much heavier was happening. According to insiders close to the family, The days following the back-to-the-beginning concert weren't just a period of recovery. They were filled with emotional goodbyes, quiet acceptance, and preparations for the inevitable. Sources say Ozzy returned to his Los Angeles home shortly after the concert, and from that point on, things took a noticeable turn. His energy was gone. The adrenaline rush from performing had worn off, and his health reportedly declined faster than anyone expected. He was in and out of bed. Breathing treatments became a daily routine. Pain management took priority. Yet, through it all, he remained lucid, fully aware, and oddly at peace. Close friends who visited during those final days later described the mood in the Osbourne home as calm but heavy. Ozzy was surrounded by family, Sharon, Kelly, Jack, and his grandchildren. The house was quiet. No cameras, no press, just love, music, and memories. Ozzy reportedly spent hours listening to old Black Sabbath tapes and watching family videos. He knew what was coming, and in true Ozzy fashion, he faced it without fear. One story from those last few days has stuck with fans. According to Jack Osbourne, Ozzy requested to hear one particular song before going to sleep one night, Goodbye to Romance. It was one of the first solo songs he ever wrote after leaving Black Sabbath in 1979, a song filled with hope, pain, and closure. He just laid there, eyes closed, humming along, Jack later shared. It was like he was saying goodbye in his own way. And yet, even with all these signs, the public had no clue how close the end really was. There were no tabloids camping outside the house, no headlines claiming Ozzy's final hours. In fact, the family had deliberately gone silent online. Kelly stopped posting. Sharon canceled a planned TV appearance. The media assumed they were on vacation or just keeping things private after the concert. But in truth, they were spending every moment by his side. What's even more powerful is that Ozzy reportedly made peace with people he hadn't spoken to in years. Quiet phone calls were made, some to old bandmates, some to estranged friends, a few even to former rivals. No press releases, no headlines, just a man tying up the loose ends of a life lived at full volume. On the night before his death, he reportedly asked to be taken outside, to feel the night air one last time. Wrapped in blankets and surrounded by his family, he looked up at the stars and whispered, "Not bad for a kid from Birmingham." That was Ozzy, always aware where he came from, always honest, even at the end. But the morning after, the internet exploded. When the announcement dropped, it felt like the internet stopped breathing. It was 7:06 a.m. in Los Angeles when Sharon Osbourne posted the message. No press conference. No drawn-out statement, just a quiet black and white image of Ozzy from behind, seated on stage, facing a crowd, his arms stretched wide like a preacher. The caption read, "Ozzy passed peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family. There will never be another. Thank you for loving him all these years." Within minutes, it was everywhere. Social media lit up like a bonfire. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube. Every platform became a living memorial. Hashtags like hashtag RIP Ozzy and hashtag Prince of Darkness trended globally within the hour. Even people who hadn't followed his career in years were sharing memories, videos, and stories. Fans posted old concert clips, photos of tattered tour shirts, ticket stubs from the 80s. Rock radio stations dropped their regular programming and played nonstop Ozzy. The world didn't just mourn, it celebrated. But while the tributes poured in, so did the chaos. Because remember, just weeks earlier, fake death rumors had gone viral. AI-generated clips claimed Ozzy had died in April. YouTubers ran with titles like Ozzy Osbourne's death confirmed. And what they're not telling you, his family had even spoken out publicly to call those videos disgusting. So when the real news broke, many people didn't believe it. At first, it felt like just another hoax. Some commenters begged for confirmation. Is this for real this time? Others accused the media of playing games. The confusion was loud and messy. News outlets scrambled to verify. TMZ confirmed it just before 8 a.m. BBC, and Rolling Stone followed shortly after. Once it became official, the tone shifted. Celebrities began posting. Tony Iommi, Ozzy's lifelong friend and Black Sabbath co-founder, wrote, "I've lost a brother today. We created something from nothing, and he changed music forever." Slash posted a photo with no caption, just a black heart. Sharon Stone, Post Malone, and even Elton John offered tributes. The rock world united. Everyone, from metalheads to mainstream artists, agreed this was the end of an era. One tribute stood out from the rest. A handwritten letter posted by Jack Osbourne read, in part, "He was a tornado of chaos, love, and madness. He made mistakes. He owned them. And through it all, he stayed honest. My dad didn't try to be a legend. He just tried to survive. The rest happened on its own." The most watched video on YouTube that day wasn't a music video. It was a fan-made tribute compiling Ozzy's wildest moments, his most emotional interviews, and his softest family clips. It racked up over 50 million views in 24 hours. In every language, from every country, fans were saying goodbye. But in the middle of all this love and grief, rumors started flying again about Ozzy's will, his final wishes, and one particularly strange theory. What if he'd known about his death down to the exact day? Even in death, Ozzy Osbourne remained unpredictable. As the world honored the Prince of Darkness with glowing tributes and deep nostalgia, some fans couldn't shake a different feeling: unease. Something about the timing, the way everything had unfolded, didn't sit right. Not in a conspiracy theory kind of way, more like an eerie coincidence that was too perfect to ignore. The farewell concert just weeks before his passing. The cryptic final Instagram post. The sudden silence from his family. And then, boom, the peaceful death, like something out of a perfectly timed documentary ending. It all seemed almost too neat for someone who'd lived such a chaotic, wild existence. One strange detail that sparked internet speculation: the Back to the Beginning concert was reportedly Ozzy's idea, and he insisted on holding it that exact week, despite serious health warnings from doctors. Some close to him later admitted he may have known more than anyone realized. He didn't say it out loud, one anonymous family friend claimed, but he was getting his affairs in order. Like, seriously in order. Then came the will. Leaked documents, still unconfirmed by the Osbourne family, allegedly revealed a detailed, almost poetic last testament. Ozzy reportedly asked for no extravagant memorial, no rock star drama. Instead, he wanted a private family gathering in Birmingham, a bench dedicated to his mother, and his ashes scattered at a specific hilltop he used to walk as a child. A quiet place, completely opposite of the loud, wild persona the world had come to know. That contrast between Ozzy the legend and Ozzy the man became the theme of every tribute. Fans began sharing moments that went beyond the stage persona. How he cried openly on the Osbournes. How he spoke about depression, aging, and regret in interviews. How, beneath all the eyeliner and mayhem, there was a deeply sensitive, even spiritual soul. And yet, the mystery around his final year continued to deepen. Whispers surfaced about unreleased recordings. A secret album Ozzy had been working on with his son Jack. Some claimed it included spoken word passages. Others hinted at recordings he made shortly before his death. Part confessional, part farewell. Whether those ever see the light of day remains uncertain. But they've only fueled the legend further. Then came the question of influence. Ozzy didn't just change metal. He reshaped pop culture. His blend of darkness, humor, and vulnerability paved the way for countless artists. Everyone from Marilyn Manson to Billie Eilish has cited him as an influence. And beyond music, his wild life helped shape modern reality TV meme culture and how we think of fame itself. But perhaps his greatest legacy wasn't about music or fame or spectacle. It was about survival. Ozzy Osbourne should have burned out 100 times over, but he didn't. He stumbled, broke, recovered, and returned again and again, right until the end. And maybe that's why his death hit so hard. Because for a man who lived like he'd never die, he somehow made peace with the fact that he would. Some people live fast and fade quickly. Ozzy Osbourne lived louder and somehow lasted longer than anyone thought possible. And even in death, his presence feels just as alive as ever. Because Ozzy wasn't just a rock star. He was a walking contradiction. The bat-biting maniac who also cried during interviews. The wild metal god who was terrified of flying. The foul-mouthed frontman who doted on his dogs and loved his wife with a loyalty that outlived decades of chaos. He was vulnerable and untamed, broken and brilliant, all at the same time. His life was filled with what should have been stopping points. Near-death experiences, scandals, breakdowns. Any one of them would have ended a lesser person. But Ozzy kept going. Not because he wanted to prove anything, but because he had to. Music wasn't a choice for him. It was a survival instinct. A lifeline. That's what made his story so different. He never chased perfection. He didn't need to be polished or politically correct or even healthy. He just needed to be Ozzy. And that, somehow, was more than enough to change music forever. His death marks the end of an era, yes, but not the end of his influence. Because the Ozzy legacy isn't locked inside a museum or buried in some aging discography. It's alive. It echoes through every heavy guitar riff, every rebellious lyric, every fan who's ever screamed along the Crazy Train at the top of their lungs. He didn't just do rock and roll. He was rock and roll. And even as fans mourn, there's something oddly comforting in how complete his story feels. The farewell concert, the family moments, the peaceful ending. It was everything Ozzy never expected, and yet everything he quietly earned. A man who once staggered through life unsure of tomorrow, somehow gave the world one of the most graceful goodbyes rock has ever seen. It didn't end in flames. It ended in peace. And maybe that's the most shocking twist of all. The Prince of Darkness didn't go out screaming, but whispering. If Ozzy's story moved you, or reminded you why you fell in love with rock in the first place, don't let it end here. Share this video. Leave your favorite Ozzy moment in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe. Long live the legend. Long live Ozzy Osbourne.